This is the business of sports.
Sports are the greatest unscripted show on earth.
The next generation of players really grew up with tech and believe in tech.
Your face is your ticket. Your face is your wallet. Your face is your access to a club.
These are such iconic and important buildings for businesses, for fans.
COVID was one of the best things that ever happened to golf.
The NFL is a bulletproof business.
Racing's unique because there is absolutely no reason why we can't compete with the guys.
Come on, is pro pickleball real? Are people really going to tune into this?
If you're playing Moneyball with a huge bag of money, you're going to be really, really good.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with my colleagues Damian, Sassower, and Vanessa Perdomo. Coming up, we'll talk about the recent turmoil gripping the NFL Players Association, and it led to NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell's resignation. We'll talk with a friend of the show, Marty Edel of Goulston and Storrs.
The executive director was found to have a conflict of interest. He was working for the Carlyle Group, a private equity group, while he was the executive director of the NFLPA.
We'll also talk sailing with Red Bull Italy team CEO Jimmy Spithill. All that is on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But first, with the FIFA Club World Cup and CONCACAF Gold Cup behind us, we are now full steam ahead to the FIFA World Cup hitting the States next year. And right now, officials in New York and New Jersey are anticipating an economic boost of over $3 billion from it. Joining us to talk about how big of an economic win hosting the World Cup could be is Bloomberg News sports reporter Sri Taylor. Sri, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports. You wrote a great article. It involves New York and New Jersey, and they expect a boodle coming from the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup next year. Tell us about it if you can.
Yes, so New York and New Jersey are jointly hosting the final match, and they're projecting a $3.3 billion economic boost to the entire region. So that's the entire state of New York and New Jersey from hosting the FIFA World Cup. And that is a little under a year from now when the final match will kick off.
So let's just clarify. That's 8 matches. That is like, is the $3.3 billion economic boost got to be from all 8 matches, right? Including the final?
Yeah, all 8 matches at Metlife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, including the final on the 19th of July.
I'm glad we mentioned that MetLife is in New Jersey, because that's my point here. As a Jersey girl, I'm very defensive about this. I'm very defensive about MetLife is in New Jersey. And people need to know this, and they need to remember this. And it's always, we're always saying it's New York, whatever. So what I'd like to know, is there any indication is there a split difference between the two areas? Are they expecting people to stay in Jersey at all? Or is the NJ Transit really going to be the biggest winner in the New Jersey economy from people coming from the city?
Right. So I'm a Jersey girl too. And I do hate to say it, but it is a little trickier to stay in a hotel around MetLife Stadium. So that's why I think the states are kind of making this a joint effort, because a lot of people are likely going to be staying in New York. Their hotels are going to be there. They're probably going to fly into either LaGuardia or JFK. And then they are going to hop on New Jersey Transit from Penn Station, and then New Jersey Transit will take it from there and then shuttle people to the stadium. So, we might see a little bit of activity in New Jersey too, just people kind of going to MetLife Stadium and buying food, buying drinks, and, we'll get some people staying locally, but I can predict there will probably be more people in New York. I think it might just be a little easier.
You're expecting about 1.2 million fans and tourists. But you try to put an extra 1.2 million people in this area. Where? Where are they going to go?
Jersey has the room.
Yeah.
We do have the room. We do.
Definitely now that hotel prices are going to be going up.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, it's going to only do great things for the area, I think. And, I think Atlanta and the other host cities, I think Atlanta is also expecting a $1 billion boost. So the cities are ready. They know what's coming, and they're going to try to, only reap the benefits of the chaos.
We have a sophisticated audience, so we need to do a little history lesson here. I'm just looking at this economic impact summary that's released, but it was released on Monday by the NYNJ Host Committee, right? So obviously they're incentivized to fluff these numbers a bit, but that's $3.3 billion they're projecting. There's 104 matches across 11 host cities, right? I'm just going to do back of the napkin and say $15 billion is what they expect to generate, in total across the whole FIFA World Cup. Qatar generated $7.5 billion in 2022. For those who remember, it cost Qatar $220 billion to put it on. A massive dislocation. And by the way, if you look back at Brazil in 2014 or even Russia in 18, again, there's this sort of black hole of spending, and the economic impact, I guess the argument as it goes, doesn't really offset the amount of money that's spent. What makes this time different? Because obviously they're only projecting $1.7 billion in spend across New York and New Jersey to generate this $3.3 billion. Sounds like a good investment to me, but is it accurate?
I would say it's accurate. I think that, across the country, the World Cup or FIFA is expecting 6.5 million people to attend the tournament, which is just the highest attended, I think, sporting event ever, maybe? You guys probably know that better than me, but that's the phrase that I'm seeing thrown around by them. And, they're also expecting the tournament to drive up to $40.9 billion USD in gross domestic product.
40 billion, is that the number, really?
40.9 billion.
Wow, and that is
US GDP.
That is just for anybody can do the math, 6 times what the World Cup generated in 2022 in Qatar, if that holds. That's an incredible amount of
the
money.
thing we have to remember there, Damian, is one, this is an expanded tournament, so they're playing more games, they have more teams than ever before, and in those other regions, Qatar, it
was a full build out. I agree. It was a full build out. You're absolutely right. Great point, Vanessa.
They built everything out. We don't have to build anything. So there's all of those things that go into that. And even in Brazil and in Russia, they also had these structures that they built that they stopped using and things like that. That's the biggest part of this. I do think those numbers are inflated. And one of the things, Sheree, that I'd like to, to talk about that they're not seemingly paying attention to or really noting in this is the problem that people are going to have with visas and people are not risking, coming to the U.S. What do you have to think about that?
It's kind of at the forefront of my mind. I don't know if the administration is thinking about it as strongly. President Donald Trump, who, refers to the FIFA president Gianni Infantino as a good friend of his. They're very chummy. He has, super high expectations for next year's turnout. And, when asked about, how, a lot of the success of the games are riding on how the U.S. will, managed to ease the international tensions brought up by Trump's trade war, his mass deportation mandates.
Yeah, didn't he say it'll make it more exciting? He said tariffs will make the FIFA World Cup more exciting because there'll be more tension between nations. That is an unbelievable statement. And I guess, the fact of the matter is, do you think there'll be any sort of negative backlash toward the United States because of this, because of these tariffs? Is it possible that people just boycott the games entirely?
I think the games are going to happen regardless. But I think what we've seen with some, other large sporting events that have kind of kicked off since Trump took office. For example, the Boston Marathon earlier this year. I was talking with the head of a tourism agency, Meet Boston, and she said that we do have a lot of concerns about Canada because this was around the time Trump was coming in really hard on Canadians, and he was threatening tariffs. And I think that a lot of Canadians were not feeling it. They were like, well, I don't think I'm going to go as a spectator. I don't think I'm going to go as a runner. And that was a really major tension point when the marathon was leading up. So this will probably be that, but tenfold.
Trying to put this in a delicate way. With the Trump administration's policies, tourism has gone down in the United States. Is the FIFA World Cup the difference, the one-off that's like, look, this is the product to bring tourists in? Will that be the case for the U.S. and will Canada say, okay, I'm going to come and see this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not even just Canada; it's Mexico. Right. It's people around the world. I was going through the very long list of who Trump has either imposed tariffs on or threatened to, and that's some of the bigger teams. So that's Mexico, Brazil, Canada, Japan, the UK, South Korea. So and these are a lot of fans that are hoping to come here and stay here for a long time and go to cities that they probably never otherwise would, like Kansas City or, Atlanta or Miami or, a bunch of these. The World Cup should be a very rare, large opportunity for the U.S. to kind of regain its good standing with the rest of the world. And I do think that, depending on how it goes, depending on how Trump kind of positions himself leading up to the games in this last year, it could either make or break the games.
About 26,000 jobs are going to be created by this. And yes, we all know restaurants and yeah. But I'm talking about the guy who owns the food truck. He's like, hey, let me back this thing up in here so I can get part of this money that's coming in. And it's the people like that are really going to benefit from this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is a great opportunity for a lot of those folks who kind of rely on that mini ecosystem around these stadiums when they're huge, game events and football and the Super Bowl and obviously the smaller soccer tournaments like the World Cup Club and basketball games and stuff like that. So a lot of these like smaller vendors will reap a lot of benefits from this. But I guess my concern when I was talking to some analysts that are looking closely at this, they were like, well, a lot of this will be one-time jobs, and then they will lose them, and they're contractors, and then so these jobs will be generated. That's a lot of jobs, 26,000. But they're temporary. A lot of them are. So we will see. It's definitely good for the time being, but not to be a negative Nancy. But.
Vanessa, you get your tickets yet?
Listen, I'm going for work, okay, and that's my ticket statement.
Well struck, Vanessa Perdomo, going to the World Cup for work. I've heard it all.
Our thanks to Bloomberg News reporter Sri Taylor for joining us. Coming up next, we turn to the world of sailing with the CEO and co-owner of Red Bull Italy, Jimmy Spithill. For my colleagues Damian, Sassower, and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with Damian Sassower and Vanessa Perdomo. Our next guest is one of the greatest athletes in the history of competitive sailing and is the subject of a new docu-series called Uncharted, SailGP. We're talking about Jimmy Spithill. He is the youngest skipper ever to win the America's Cup and is now team CEO of Red Bull Italy. Jimmy is here to talk with us about the team, the Rolex SailGP Championship, and the state of sailing. Jimmy, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Oh, hi, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
People keep calling it a niche sport. I'm not so sure anymore because people are starting to get to know this sport. And one thing that has helped is that you have been the subject of a documentary that is out right now.
Yeah, look, I think sailing was a niche sport, and it was definitely viewed as something probably for the elite. You needed quite a lot of equipment. And so let's say the barrier to entry was generally not open for everyone. I think as technology's gone along, and I think just as the sport's evolved, that's, that narrative is well and truly out the window. And certainly now, if you look at where SailGP is or the top end of the sport, it's, boats doing over 100 kilometers an hour. They're powered by nature. There's real risk. So it's a lot more like, I guess, auto racing, yet the team functions like any other high-level sporting team. like a football or a rugby team. They've got certain playbooks, they've got to work together. And so, yeah, it's fascinating to see it. And I'd even say to get into the sport now at a lower level, the barrier is even lower because of technology and foiling. You can now go and get a foiling surfboard and essentially an inflatable batwing, and you're out there. So gone are the days of having to have a trailer and boats and all this sort of gear. It's this sort of whole, advancement and quantum leap in technology and construction and carbon fiber, etc., has really changed the game, I think, from the very bottom to the very top.
To have this sort of team-based thing that a lot of people understand how that works. Do you think that's what changed the game kind of for sailing, is this team format that everyone kind of understands and can follow along with?
Yeah, I think you're right, because it is, from the outside, it's a very, let's say, confusing sport to understand. Like, where are the boats going? What is the course? There was a whole lot of rules, and then even the sort of technical jargon. I mean, I used to confuse myself, and I'm a professional sailor. So I think a big part of it was really trying to simplify it. The other thing, I think, that the top end of the sport before SailGP was probably the America's Cup. And that was something that was really every 4 years. The rules would constantly change. They still do. And you didn't have that regular season. The other thing was that the boats for a big part of the America's Cup were, man, I can tell you, it was a little bit like watching paint dry. I mean, while it was okay to sail them, but to watch them, it wasn't like you could look away and have a conversation and look back and it didn't look like a whole lot had changed. The third thing is probably, let's say, stadium. Having a stadium and fans there in the bleachers and watching and being able to hear that crowd. And that's, notoriously in sail racing, it's been, let's take the course as far away from land as we can. Let's get it perfect and let's not let anyone get too close. Well, SailGP is the opposite. Very tight racetracks. When we just recently raced in the Hudson in Manhattan there, the races are 12 to 13 minutes long, 12 boats, very tight racetrack with sideline boundaries. One sideline is literally the spectator stands, and you can almost reach out and high-five the athletes. I think, the other thing is having a very, very tight and squared-away broadcast, where fans, when they turn it on, they get an understanding, they get educated, and all the athletes are mic'd live. It's one of the very few sports where men and women compete together in the teams. And so, yeah, we're starting to, let's say, have the right ingredients to produce something that I believe, well, we're already seeing it in terms of our TV and media numbers, but starting to get out of, let's say, what was thought a niche sport, and for people that are just interested in sailing to more mainstream. And when you look at the audience, I think it's about 20 or 30% are actually just sailing audience. The rest are non-sailors, and a lot of racing fans, actually.
I admire you so much, and I want to bring up an extreme positive, but I have to start out, unfortunately, with a negative that happened. You were ousted from the Oracle Team USA when new ownership came in, and then you established Red Bull Italy, and you're just kicking butt. And I admire you for establishing the team. Can you take us through that process?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, look, I got involved with SailGP in season 2. During season 1, I was involved in an America's Cup campaign and sort of finishing that off. And Larry Ellison approached me and Russell Coos to come and lead the American team at that stage. They just finished last in season 1, had no sponsors, and so we immediately took the team to the final. We had a bunch of fantastic commercial partners. But anyway, I was thinking at that point, look, this is my long-term plan here with the team, and I had an ownership option on the team. Now, while looking for partners, we received what was then a record offer for the team to be purchased by a guy named Ryan McKillen, who was one of the early Uber guys, and a consortium he had put together. Now, at that point, I had an option. There was one catch in that. In that offer, and that was that, well, they wanted to field their own team, so really start again, and they wanted a full American team. I was born in Australia. My wife and kids are American, but so they wanted to go all American and run it their own way. So, yeah, it was an interesting process because it was either, well, how do I treat this? I could block the deal and just stay here and keep looking to build it up. But at the same time, I'd been competing with an Italian team in the America's Cup, and I thought, what an incredible opportunity to now, one, go through the process of a sale of a team, but essentially start again and start from scratch as opposed to taking over an existing team like I did with the American team. And that's really what led to Red Bull SailGP Italy. And it's just been such an amazing ride to get here. We're the newest team. We've got the least amount of hours, but we've just got a fantastic lineup of guys and girls in our roster. Huge fan base. I mean, if you've ever watched, Italian fans, they're some of the most passionate out there. And also a very, let's say, educated marketplace as well in terms of commercially and audience. So, yeah, it was just a great opportunity. It was a win-win. It was a win for SailGP to bring someone like Ryan and the group he brought in to take over the American team. And the same time for me, it was just, I mean, how many athletes get the opportunity to one, even get involved in the ownership of a team, but to be able to do it twice and with a completely new group, different culture, etc. I just thought, wow, what an opportunity.
The whole idea of an athlete, who's done the whole sport, done it from the top to bottom, and then going into a CEO role, but also still competing, you're still a skipper and things like that. And then you co-owner, CEO, how you wear all those hats. Tell us about how that informs you in a unique way in running the team.
I think it's like a lot of businesses, and even when you look around at other successful sporting franchises, I believe that some of the most successful and valuable are the ones that are ultimately influenced or run by ex-athletes, because it's a little bit like armies or generals, generals in the army or admirals in the Navy. The guys that have been in the trenches, have been out on the water, been there on the ground, and then worked that way up, they really know what has been going on in the whole process. Now, I'm not saying that's the only way, because clearly there's examples of, admirals and generals that haven't gone that way, and in people that run these teams, all sorts of sporting teams and franchises. But I believe if you really want to have a full understanding of what it's like and to really gain the respect of people on and off the water, if you've got that sort of background and knowledge, there's no shortcut to that. You don't just get that by clicking your fingers and reading about it. If you've lived and breathed it, you've made mistakes and had the growth, that's a different level of education. And I believe I've always been inspired by athletes that have been successful on the field of play, but then the ability to go out of their comfort zone, and be successful off the field of play, almost like a second career. And at the same time, benefit I'm also finding is being able to impact and now help and provide something for the next generation. That's in itself something really rewarding. But at the time when I was competing, to be quite honest with you, that was never really something on the back of my mind. That, when you're competing, all you're thinking about is the game and to win. But now when I look at all of the ingredients, it's been fascinating just to be able to play the different roles and get a full circle picture.
One of the investors in SailGP, a very famous name, Anne Hathaway. Tell us about that, because now you're attracting some really big names involved in this that people instantly know.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, and I think if you look at the group that we've assembled and the team, it's just, I mean, as the founder of the team, if I could have just drawn up a wish list, I'm not sure I would have had the courage to say the names we've got. It's unbelievable. I mean, we've got some incredible entrepreneurs, businessmen and women. We've got some amazing, from all walks of, we've got amazing actresses, athletes. And ultimately what that means is we just have such an awesome group to go back and call on their own experiences and their lessons learned to apply to our, let's say, sports and entertainment product that we are growing together. And if you look at all the other teams, there's some incredible names as well, like, some of the businessmen, some of the funds, some of the Mark Lazarys with the US team, athletes, Kylian Mbappe, Sebastian Vettel, actors, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman. I mean, the list just goes on and on. And so I think when it's all good and well for me to come and tell you how good SailGP is or what I think the teams are worth, and it's a little bit like selling your own house. You can think it's worth $1 billion, but at the end of the day, the market will tell you what it's worth. And here we are again. The the market will tell us from an investment point of view, well, is this investable? And what's our market value? Now, if you look at the growth we've had in just 5 seasons, especially starting out when we're in COVID and what people thought was a niche sport, well, we've got a pretty big range of sophisticated men and women investors. You look at the valuations now, you look at the TV numbers, and even getting feedback from the hospitality and the racing experience live. Again, you will think I'm biased. I am biased, but you only have to now look at the data, the results, and the people that are investing in these teams. They're not, the majority of them, again, they're not sailing fans. They really see the value here.
Our thanks to Jimmy Spithill, team CEO of Red Bull Italy, for joining us. Up next, we turn to the NFL and a controversy that has shaken up the NFL Players Association. For Damian Sassower and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports, Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. We explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with Damian Sassower and Vanessa Perdomo. The NFL's Players Association recently found itself embroiled in controversy that led to NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell, as well as at least one other executive, being out of the NFLPA. There are several key developments here, and we wanted to get to the bottom of it with an old friend of the show. Joining us now is Marty Edel. He's Goulston and Stewart's Sports Law Practice Co-Chair and Adjunct Professor at Columbia University. Marty, welcome back to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you for having me.
Man, there is so much NFL news to talk about, and I guess I want to start off with the NFLPA, where it was kind of a meltdown what has happened. The NFLPA Executive Director, Lloyd Howell, and President J.C. Tretter resigned earlier this month. What in the world happened, Marty?
Well, we have a confluence of 2 events that have been disclosed. I can't tell you what else is behind the scenes because I don't know. But the 2 big events here are, one, that the NFL and NFLPA entered into a confidentiality agreement to hold confidential the decision which found that there was collusion by the NFL owners. Why would anyone withhold that from their constituency, in this case, the players? The second issue, of course, was that the executive director was found to have a conflict of interest. He was working for the Carlyle Group, a private equity group, while he was the executive director of the NFLPA. Surprise.
The meat of it, right? I mean, the grievance itself, as I understand it, was accusations that team owners were colluding to suppress the guaranteed pay, for quarterbacks in the wake of the Cleveland Browns' decision to sign Deshaun Watson to some ungodly $230 million sum. Talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, is there going to be any sort of potential blowback, any damages to, quarterbacks who, maybe weren't given a fair deal because of this?
Yes. So let's start off with that. But it's far broader than 3 quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Russell Wilson, who claimed that they were deprived of guaranteed dollars because the owners colluded after paying Deshaun Watson this ungodly sum, Damian, that you pointed out, $230 million in guaranteed compensation over 5 years. But it affected a lot more. There were also 594 veteran players who claimed that they were deprived of some amounts of guaranteed compensation because of this owner's collusion. And the concept of owner's collusion is that the owners got together and somehow agreed to hold down guaranteed compensation. There was an arbitration before a very respected arbitrator who happens to be the NFLPA collective bargaining system arbitrator. And that was Chris Droney, who is a former judge on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. He rendered a 61-page decision, which promptly was buried because of a confidentiality agreement between the NFLPA and the NFL. Only because of leaks through the media, and thank goodness we have a vigorous media to ferret out the truth. But because of leaks in the media, it came out that Droney found there was collusion among the owners. He didn't find that the NFL had colluded in a way that resulted in damages. I can get into that later if you want, because he set forth 3 questions and answered 2 of them in the negative. But he found clearly there was collusion, and he based that on Commissioner Goodell and Jeff Pash, the general counsel, talking to the owners and saying, we have this problem. Our revenues have declined since COVID, and you guys are still giving out lots and lots of guaranteed dollars. That's obviously a paraphrase, and exhorted them to be more careful about it. And the arbitrator found that there was collusion. Well, Marty, and then it got buried.
Apparently, there were also a series of text messages between the owner for the Arizona Cardinals and the Chargers. I mean, is that just the first? I mean, how are they getting access to text messages between owners? I mean, is that part of disclosure? I just find that so fascinating. I mean, are there other text, chats out there that might come to light in lieu of all this?
So the answer should be a decided yes. They would, in terms of the arbitration itself, the NFLPA, which was prosecuting the claims on behalf of Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Russell Wilson, would have had an opportunity to get disclosure of texts, emails, documents, which go to their claim of unlawful collusion. And they would have gotten those emails, those texts. There may be others out there. We simply don't know. They're all under a confidentiality agreement. And no one has seen fit to disclose everything to the public yet. Maybe Bloomberg Business on Sports will issue a subpoena or freedom of the press FOIA request to try to get that info.
Well, I'm sure former NFLPA Executive Director DeMaurice Smith is saying, you miss me now? Because there's more to this with how apparently he expensed multiple strip club trips on the NFLPA's dime. And that also came out. I didn't even hear about that part until much later. So I don't know where to go with this, Marty.
Well, I had not heard about that particular one, but this is quite a tangled web, as you point out. We have the NFLPA technically losing the arbitration, having the right to appeal, which according to its collective bargaining agreement, it has 10 days to appeal. That appeal time ran starting in late January of 2025 when arbitrator Droney handed down his decision. The NFLPA did nothing. Right. Only after Pablo Torres Finds Out podcast was there pressure put on the NFLPA to say, maybe you guys ought to appeal the loss here. And they filed this appeal in July. Well, that's more than 10 days. There's a good chance that they're barred from, they'll put in all sorts of special circumstances, which I haven't seen yet. But there's a good chance their appeal will be barred because it was not timely. Then you have the issues which are coming out now of the executive director, Lloyd Howell, expensing charges for which there's no reasonable explanation having been given yet, being paid by the Carlyle Group to explore the investment of private equity in the NFL. You got to keep your nose clean.
I heard this is the New York Post, so take it in stride here. But apparently, Lloyd Howell, he ordered the facilities department in Washington's D.C. headquarters to merge 2 spaces in the parking garage into one over concern of potential door dings on his Porsche Cayenne Turbo, and he numbered the spot 32 in honor of O.J. Simpson. Just saying, this is the New York Post reporting. So It sounds like Lloyd Howell has some explaining to do in the eyes of, the media and, more importantly, his constituents amongst the NFL. I mean, the players themselves. This is just kind of outrageous, no?
Yeah, and one of the great parts of that outrage is they use number 32, which not only refers to O.J. Simpson, who has a less than stellar reputation, but also all those great players who use number 32. Jim Brown was number 32. Sandy Koufax in baseball, Elston Howard in baseball, all numbers 32. And yet he's using it. No, I'm just making light of that one aspect.
Making fun. Again, I mean, Michael, to confirm what you said, yes, in the same, kind of article, they talk about, the strip clubs. They talk about, Howell previously been accused of sexual discrimination back in 2011. And while he was an employee at Booz Allen, another, management consulting firm of repute, and so it's just amazing that the NFL even had him representing their interests. And for this to happen so quickly into his tenure, to your point, shows just how challenging that position truly is.
Well, I think that's right. But, as we've seen a whole bunch of executive directors of players associations who have kept their noses clean, who have represented very well the interests of the players. Some owners may say that the executive directors represented the players' interests too zealously. This is just the opposite. Did he represent the players' interests well enough? You're right. He has a lot of explaining, but don't count on that happening since he's no longer part of the NFLPA.
Can we talk about it in a little more uplifting, if you want to call it that? CNBC first reported this. The NFL is in talks to buy a 10% stake in ESPN for some NFL media assets. And according to CNBC, the stake size is still a moving target. Now, what does that mean for ESPN and what does that mean for the NFL?
Well, legally at least, and probably financially, it's a boondoggle for the NFL. It gets to have an outlet for more and more, for increasing amounts of its content. It will have a network which has a wide audience to watch whatever the NFL will come up with to be appropriate. It may not only be NFL games, but it may be documentaries. It may be interviews with experts a la Martin Edel. You never could tell. But it will have, it's a good vertical integration for the NFL. For ESPN, it depends how much it's giving up other than the equity part of it to acquire rights to NFL licenses. I think it could be a win-win.
Our thanks to Marty Edel for joining us. He is adjunct professor at Columbia University and co-chair at Goulston and Storrs Law Practice. And thank you for joining us. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. For my colleagues Damian Sassower and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports, Bloomberg Radio around the world. Stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.